So we're a few days removed now from Super Bowl 59, where the Philadelphia Eagles were triumphant and they dominated the Kansas City Chiefs. And watching that game as a Lions fan, it really bummed me out for a few reasons. The obvious being that, when you're cheering for a team that is in the Super Bowl mix, at least perceived to be in the Super Bowl mix, and they don't win, it always sucks to see someone else win. And this year, obviously, the Lions weren't as close, but it still sucks because there's just, I don't know. As a fan, you always want your team to end up there, and the fact that they didn't just sucks. And again, they were a 15-win team. The expectation was this could have been the year, and it wasn't. And that with that always comes the natural heartbreak involved with sports. But watching this game was also rather illuminating because as this game went on and the Eagles continued to just absolutely destroy the Chiefs, it kind of just became clear that, you know what, this wasn't meant to be. This was not the Lions' year, and that's okay. And I don't mean that in the sense that the Lions would have gotten killed by the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. It probably would have been a competitive game, but at the end of the day, the Eagles proved in this Super Bowl and with their dominant playoff run, granted against not the best teams in the NFC side of things, but in this dominant playoff run, that they are the most talented roster in the league. Obviously, the Lions will be challenging them for that throne in the next couple of years as Brad Holmes continues to draft, and he's been one of the best drafters over the last few years. So you expect the Lions will be able to at least contest them for that title. But for now, there's no dispute. The Eagles are the best roster in football. And I don't mean that in the sense that the Lions can't compete with them right now. If both teams were fully healthy and the Lions and Eagles went at it, they both probably win 50% of the time. That would be a heavyweight title fight. So, what I mean by that is the Lions need to level up in order to get an advantage over the Eagles because there would be a lot of concern if they were to match up as it stands right now. Obviously, though, that wouldn't happen because a lot has to happen before these teams could match up next year, especially in the playoffs next year if it comes to that. So, rather today, I want to focus more on some of the lessons that the Lions can take from this Super Bowl, both from the Eagles winning and the Chiefs losing, and just how it can impact the way they construct this roster this offseason. Now, number one, the main story coming out of the Super Bowl, having an elite pass rush matters. And what I mean by that isn't just having one guy that can get home. It's having 4 or 5 guys that can get home consistently and get pressure consistently. Because if we look at what the Eagles pass rush was able to do in this game, it was very reminiscent of what the Buccaneers were able to do when they defeated the Chiefs in the Super Bowl a few years ago, where Patrick Mahomes was just running for his life. The Chiefs' offensive line was useless, and the Eagles just won every one-on-one rep all night long. And I bring this up because there's been a misconception going around Lions Twitter about what exactly the Lions need in order to get a pass rush that has the potential to dominate like that. And this all centers around Lions Twitter's obsession with trading for another elite edge rusher to pair with Aiden Hutchinson. And I don't mean just a very good one. I mean a Myles Garrett type of guy. And look, I'll be the first to say, Myles Garrett on the Lions would be so sick. It would be so fun. Him and Hutchinson would instantly become the best pass rush duo of at least since the turn of the century. And that would be a very unique challenge for teams to have to deal with. How do you deal with the fact that you probably have to leave one of the best 3 edge rushers in the league one-on-one? The answer is you probably have to block 6 or 7 every single play, which would limit an offense even further. With that being said, though, it's also kind of unrealistic to expect the Lions to get Garrett and Hutchinson and also keep the quality of their roster as high as it has been. Because if you acquire Myles Garrett, that's also going to come with a very handsome raise and extension, and Aiden Hutchinson is about to get a massive raise and extension. Kirby Joseph is going to get a good raise. Jameson Williams is due for an extension too. Like, the Lions have contracts to hand out in-house already. So if you add Myles Garrett into that, you suddenly can't really sign free agents, or you have to let one of your other emerging stars go. Well, so while Myles Garrett is fun, I don't think that's realistic, and it also is completely missing the point of what has made the Eagles' defensive line so good. Because if you look at it right now, no one is making that much money on it. Their best player is Jalen Carter, who is on a rookie contract, but he didn't even have the most dominant Super Bowl. It was the edge guys. The Eagles weren't winning because one guy was dominating his matchups all night. They were winning because every guy was winning their one-on-one matchups all night. So for all the Lions fans that are clamoring for them to get Myles Garrett, yes, it would be fun, but you're not really weighing the cost of that acquisition seriously. And also, it takes more. Because what happens if Aiden Hutchinson gets hurt again? What happens if Myles Garrett gets hurt next year? What happens if both get hurt? The answer? Look at the divisional round. The Lions had no pass rush, no Oli McNeil, no Aiden Hutchinson, and look what happened. Their four-man rushes got zero pressure all night long. They had to blitz to get pressure, and against Jaden Daniels, who is very good against the blitz, it was a disaster. You leave yourself more susceptible to injuries, your depth is going to be worse, and you're going to have to lose one of your emerging stars. Again, not saying that it's a bad idea, it is just super risky. The closest thing to a big ticket trade the Lions have gotten, aside from trading Matthew Stafford out of town to get assets in, so it was selling off a big ticket, was maybe trading up from 32 to 12 to take Jameson Williams. The Lions don't really trade first round picks. They traded a third for Carlton Davis last year, which worked out really well, and I hope they keep him. Another guy that they couldn't keep if they brought in Myles Garrett. It doesn't fit with the Lions' MO, and the idea that the Lions could acquire someone for short-term success versus drafting smartly and developing for long-term success, what are you going to take? The idea isn't to have 1 year where you have this super team. The idea is to have a ton of kicks at the can, and 1 year you're going to break through. So anyways, moving on from that point, because that is a major point of contention with Lions Twitter right now, but to move on from that, what are some other lessons they can take? Well, if watching Mahomes get slaughtered all night was any indication, maintaining an elite offensive line will be vital. Penei Sewell, he's not going anywhere for probably his entire career. You're good. You have one super elite tackle, one of the best tackles in the league. Frank Ragnow, you've got for another few years at least. He is one of the best centers in the league. And then you have kind of a hodgepodge of guys that are good and that keeps the offensive line really good. In Taylor Decker, who's a very good starter, he sometimes gets beat by some better edge rushers, but that happens. Graham Glasgow, who had a terrible year, but you hope either bounces back or you move on. You have Kevin Zayler, who had a fantastic year, and if you bring him back, you maintain the right side of the O-line. And then you have Christian Mahogany, who figures to be in the mix as a starting guard for going forward. Maintaining that offensive line will be huge, especially because we know how Goff is under pressure. And also the offensive line drives a lot of what the Lions like to do offensively anyways, so this kind of is a no-brainer, but it also is just worth mentioning. And as I just mentioned, the long-term success is always going to be more important to this franchise than just 1 year, one window. Like, they want to have as many kicks at the can as possible, as I said. Next, this is a weird one, but this is relating more to Jalen Hurts and the way that he was able to elevate his play in the Super Bowl when it mattered most after not a very inspiring 3 playoff games before that. And that is Jared Goff needs to look a lot more like he did in the 2023 playoffs than he did in the divisional round this year. If you'll recall that 2023 run, the Lions against the Rams, they had a pretty clean game. It wasn't the best offensive game. They put up 24 points, but Goff, very efficient all day. Against the Buccaneers the next week, he was very efficient all day, and the Lions won on the back of their offense. And against the Niners, everything fell apart around him, but Goff was the only good thing about the Lions consistently the whole game. But this year, by contrast, 4 turnovers. Can't have it. Just at all. It's absolutely not something that you'll be able to win with. Excusing the Texans game, which Houston proved they just weren't that good this year. So the fact that you won that game was a miracle on its own, but you're not going to win a playoff game when you commit that many turnovers. So Goff has to be better. Like, he's proven he can do it, but that's got to be the Goff we get going forward. You have to get 2023 playoff Goff, not 2024, because if we're projecting the way the Lions can win a Super Bowl, it's with Goff playing at an elite level. So I don't know, man. I know that there's a lot of angst with Lions fans right now and the state of the roster, the state of the team. My message to Lions fans is just take a breath. Relax. This is only the second year the Lions have made the playoffs in the Dan Campbell era, and the first one was pretty spectacular, so we're a little spoiled in that sense that we had such a good playoff run that first time around that the disappointment this year just stings a little bit more. Again, this is one of the best rosters in the league. Hopefully next year they aren't quite as decimated by injuries, and even if they are, you'll have more depth around them because you have another draft that Brad Holmes will be able to put together to hopefully bolster the roster even more. I'm trying so hard to avoid using the phrase trust the process, but yeah. So let me know what you took away from this Super Bowl, whether or not you think the Lions are on the right path, as I believe that they are. Like, I want to say that. I am fully confident the Lions are on their way to being a legit Super Bowl contender for the next few years, and we'll just see what happens. But if you disagree, agree, whatever, maybe you're a fan of another team, you can give an outside perspective. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on the Lions' long-term outlook. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Click like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you loved it, tell all your friends. The content might slow down a little bit as we kick off the early stages of the off season, but I'll be back whenever there's news and, whenever there's more topics to talk about. So bear with me as we get through the early stages of the off season. I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.